we're going to play a clip of Brian Deese, who is an advisor to Irish Death, Joe Biden's Secret Service name. He went on CNN and was asked by the host, hey, what do you say to Americans who are expressing concern that, like, hey, we can't pay $5 gas for months or years indefinitely? Let's see what Brian Deese has to say about this.
Sustainable. What do you say to those families who say, listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years. This is just not sustainable.
Well, what you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm.
All right, this is about the future of the liberal world order.
That segment should really be called "Man Who Never Speaks to Anyone Who Makes Less Than $250,000 a Year Opines on Gas Prices."
Yeah, right, exactly. Some people...
That's it. You got to be living in such a bubble if you're a political operative who would think you nailed it saying that.
Well, look, this is the breakaway society conspiracy theory. Like, this is the heart of it. The heart of that theory is that elites, rich people, are going to create a society for themselves in which they are insulated from all of the decay and turmoil surrounding them. And, we've heard stories about bunkers in New Zealand, things like this, right? But even setting aside all that, even if this breakaway society is not a physical space, you can see it happening right now where this guy, advisor to the president, is saying, well, we don't know what to tell you. You can't pay $4.85 a gallon for months or years. Look, the future of the liberal world order is at stake. Now, liberal world order, of course, people jump to thinking new world order. What they mean by liberal world order is basically American hegemony, basically, is what they're saying. That's really what they mean.
Keeping things the way they are right
Western
now.
hegemony.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Western dominance. This is about Western dominance. This is about maintaining a unipolar world. Right. And that's at stake. And so we're going to do that no matter the price for the working class people in our countries. Here at home. You're just going to have to suck it up. We're not taking our foot off the gas here, no matter what. Too bad. We don't know what to tell you. Western dominance is at stake. We're not letting it fall.
Carpool.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Where is the Jimmy Carter advice? Wear a sweater.
Right.
Yeah, that
exactly.
worked out. That worked out well for him. At least that had the charm of having a certain grim, puritanical work ethic, suck it up kind of feel to it. That I kind of
right,
have
because
a certain affection for,
You can actually warm yourself up with a sweater. Right, it's cold in your house, wear a sweater. I follow that advice to this day. I like to wear a sweater rather than crank the heat.
The reasons we were having an oil crisis was completely different.
Well, yeah, sure.
At the time. So I'm kind of sympathetic to that speech helped to end his presidency. But if you look at why, it's because Americans are allergic to hearing hard truths like that. They didn't want to hear that. And Reagan comes along and goes, he was the MAGA candidate of his day. We're going to make America
literally,
great
he said
again.
we're going to make America great again.
We're going to make
he
America
used that
great
exact
again.
phrase.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, that versus the guy who tells you to put a fucking sweater on if you're cold. Who are people going to vote for, right?
The thing is, at least putting on a sweater does the job of warming you up in a chilly room. This guy's saying,
nah.
Nothing. No. It's, you don't want to pay $4.85? Too bad. Future of the world order is at stake. We have to do this.
A friend of mine who's a member of the PMC in good standing said in response, when they first did the sanctions, I said, this is going to hurt working people. And they said, poor people have always pulled money for gas. This is how they look at these things. Like, they're not in that position. They don't really know anybody who's in that position. So it's very easy to take that view. But listen, if the gas prices keep going up, you're going to have fucking riots, man. You're going to have riots. You got whole parts of this country where you cannot go to work without driving. I would say probably more of the country than not. You can't get anywhere without a car. You know, as a New Yorker, when I was living in LA for a while, it was like on principle, I wasn't going to take my car to go to the 7-Eleven 3 blocks away, and people would look at me out their car like they thought I was a serial killer, like I'm casing the houses to figure out which one I want to break in. Like They just couldn't conceive somebody's walking to the fucking store. But most of the LA is an extreme example, but most of the country is like that.
Oh, absolutely. Look, they're already locking away the ice cream. They're locking away the batteries. What does this tell you? These are indications, right? That people are getting desperate now. This is not a fucking game anymore. And the thing that's so politically stupid about this, I mean, I touched on this a few shows ago. I didn't go into it in that much detail. But, well, actually, we did go into it in a fair amount of detail when we talked about the Crystal Ball Bill Maher segment. There are reasons why gas is going up that are not related to the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, the Russia-Ukraine war is exacerbating that. It's pouring salt in that wound. There's no doubt about that. But there are other causes of this. A lot of this is because when demand for gasoline tanked during the lockdowns, a lot of oil companies cut back on production, refining, exporting. And now that demand is back up, they think, well, rather than go through the trouble of pulling more oil out of the ground and hiring more people and expanding operations again, we can just kind of choke supply and juice the price. Right. Like that's what's fueling a lot of the inflation. And you know, some of it is more organic. Some of it, yes, has to do with the Fed, you know, pumping $6 trillion, you know, into the system in the wake of that lockdown. I'm not going to say that has no impact on it. So point is, there are other causes for inflation that are not necessarily
that has impact on it. That it put a lot of money in the pockets of futures speculators to drive up the futures prices.
Right. But like that stuff is not necessarily at the feet of Joe Biden. That's not really Joe Biden's fault. And so why would you, if you're an advisor to the president, put out there that this is all because of Putin's war in Ukraine? It's so dumb because A, it's not true, and B, what they don't realize, the reason they think this is good politics is because their base is so brainwashed into thinking Putin bad. We just say Putin and that explains everything, right?
Well,
everybody be off our backs.
They're wealthier.
Well, that, but also the fact that their base is so conditioned to just hate Vladimir Putin, they think that blaming something on Putin, okay, makes sense. Everybody will buy that. What they don't realize is that most of the country sees this as Biden's price hike because they hold Biden responsible in large part for this Russia-Ukraine war. Most Americans think that if Trump were still president, this war would not be happening. Just that alone. Whether you think Biden's to blame for it or not, blame is a weird word to use because obviously Putin's the one who pulled the trigger and did it, so he's technically to blame, right? In a technical sense, although we did egg this on for over a decade. But anyway, whether he's to blame or not to blame, people don't think this would be happening if Biden were not the president. And so to blame gas prices on the Russia-Ukraine war is to essentially blame Joe Biden for increased gas prices. And they don't realize that. They don't realize how politically idiotic it is to pin this all on Russia-Ukraine.
Yeah, that never works. In the end, you're the president. Fair, unfair, good, bad, indifferent. You become a symbol of what's going on in the country. People will give you some slack if you look like you're doing something. And that's what he's trying to do by, I don't know, he's cursing out the private gas stations now, blaming them or talking about the oil companies. All right, I'm gonna lay down one of those hard truths that people don't want to hear. I've thought this for a long time. I have always believed that eventually, we had unique circumstances here, that eventually gas prices were going to go off the hook, and all of the people who want to go to carbon neutral, who want to go over to alternative energy, are going to get a taste of what that would really mean. And their resolve is not going to be what you think it is, because there are a lot of trade-offs. And this applies to the whole American hegemony that we're talking about. This applies to the whole American world order that we're talking about. The average American, even if you're a flaming lefty, you are greatly benefiting from the system that you decry in ways that you don't even think about, brother. We are no longer the world's reserve currency. We no longer have the kind of control through force of arms that we have over the flow of overseas events and foreign policy. We no longer have the control over energy resources that gives us. And we're going to be in a world of fucked. And people are not going to like it. They're not. All of their principles about how they want to dismantle this system are going to go out the window pretty quickly if they get a taste of what that's really going to mean. That is the side of, the real politic people and their logic that nobody wants to express any sympathy for, because, that logic requires a certain kind of Machiavellian, amoral kind of what we would traditionally call in the Judeo-Christian tradition, evil. But hey, yeah, like, you stop doing those things. This is just a taste of what that's going to mean. You wait until your cash is worthless. Then you're going to have a lot of people saying, yeah, no, those were the good old days when we had the gunboats patrolling the Taiwan Straits and all was right with the world. It's gonna look pretty good once we're actually reduced to the material circumstances that our economy naturally generates, without all of the force projection that we do around the world to maintain a system that primarily benefits ourselves and our allies.
Well, this is why I loved the Planet of the Humans movie so much. And, because its central thesis was that, like, look, at the end of the day, we're going to have to change. We're going to have to fundamentally change as a society. We're not going to trick the planet into putting up with our shit because now we use reusable coffee cups instead of foam coffee cups, or we drive electric cars instead of gas cars, or we use, our reusable bags instead of our plastic bags. Like, we're just going to have to do less because, yes, material circumstances will change and we are going to have to adapt to that. We're going to have to stay home more and just go sit by a fucking stream and meditate a little bit.
I'm gonna have to put a sweater on.
Right, you're gonna have to put a sweater on. You're gonna have to make do with less. And we think of make do with less meaning we have to suffer. Well, no, you don't have to suffer. It doesn't have to be suffering. We think of it as suffering because we're hardwired to go, buy, sell, make. Right. We have to change the way we live to the point where we're not constantly seeking that kind of gratification.
And that's going to be a very painful transition.
Of course it is. It was for a lot of people. That's why mental health crises shot through the roof during the lockdowns, because people didn't know how to do that. That movie came out like a few weeks into the lockdown. That's just the beginning. That's just the beginning. Exactly.
When the British Empire collapsed, going to a therapist just wasn't a thing except for the upper classes. So we don't really have good records on the mental health effects of the collapse of an empire, but I'm sure they were pretty severe.
Please clap.